Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all, as the title of today's episode is about Russia. It seems hacked the German military, and not the military itself, but some of the generals and the officers who were discussing sending the Taurus missiles to Ukraine, and what could that mean for this conflict, and also how could Ukraine use these missiles to strike the bridge connecting between the mainland of Russia and the Crimean. However, before that, I'm going to address what's happening in the Gaza Strip. And I think what's happening there is a stain that will stay on the forehead of humanity forever. I cannot see that nothing can be done at the moment to stop the Netanyahu government, except that the United States forces him to stop. What is he doing in the Gaza Strip? Malnutrition, starvation. People are dying every day from malnutrition. Guys, this is something very serious that I think most of us, and probably most of you, have not experienced in their entire lives. I remember when my family, my relatives, when they were besieged by Al-Qaeda terrorists in Aleppo between 2012 and 2015, the beginning of 2015, and they imposed a harsh embargo on food products, on nutrition products, on baby products, and people were starving. And of course, this was not reported in the mainstream media because it's inconvenient to report about this because Al-Qaeda was supported by them, right? But I know for sure that the people who were on starvation mode or on a survival mode, at that period of time, there was an increase in crime rates. There was an increase in people trying to secure the food. So people, when an aid comes, for example, from a helicopter dropped to the people to eat, there have been incidences that the people were pushing each other in order to get the food and the medicine and the basic stuff that they can survive, right? This is human nature. And I would really recommend you guys to watch a movie. I know that lots of people do not like to watch Netflix. I don't have a Netflix account, but I watched this on a friend's account. The movie called Society of the Snow. And this is about Flight 571 traveling from Uruguay to Chile. And this plane crashes over one of the mountains. And the people, some of them survive. I think around 20 of them survive. And they had to survive in these dire conditions for several months because the rescue team couldn't find them. And this was very old. Let's say in the 70s, they didn't have the best technology to detect their location, right? To locate them. So during this time, some of them died from freezing cold situation and conditions. And they couldn't find food. They had some food stored in their packages, in their bags, and they tried to save them for later. But at the end, they didn't have much. And they didn't have food at all. So they started to eat the human flesh of their deceased friends and family members. And this is the human nature. When you are on a survival mode, you do extraordinary things that you cannot imagine. And what Israel is doing nowadays by starving the Palestinian people, they want to dehumanize the Palestinians. So what they do is they starve them, and then they drop some humanitarian aid, or they allow some humanitarian convoys to get into the Gaza Strip. So when the Palestinians come, run, use physical violence, call it whatever you want, in order to secure some food, because they're not really letting in much, right? So if you don't rush and if you don't probably use your physical violence as a man, you may not secure a bread or a milk or any type of product for your baby, for example, right? So what they do, they have drones, they capture this situation, and then they post it online trying to show to the international audience that, look, this is how the Palestinians act. They're savages, This is how they dehumanize them. They show them like they are insects from above, from the drone camera at night, with a black and white quality. And you don't see humans when you see the footage. You just see black things like running and trying to secure or hand over something, right, from this aid. So this is how Israel dehumanizes them. And this is happening under the watch of the international community. But most importantly, it's happening under the watch of the United States. And the United States is complicit with this, complicit with the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. It's complicit with the genocide against the Palestinian people. It's complicit because the United States provides the money, provides the ammunition, provides the weapons. Israel used half of its weapons and ammunition and the bombs against 2.2 million people. The amount of bombs that Israel dropped over the Gaza Strip amounts to 1 or 2 Hiroshima and Nagasaki's in a very small geographical area. So imagine that. And under such circumstances, by killing over 30,000 Palestinian civilians and then starving them, what do you expect for the people to do? Put yourself in their shoes. If you're starving and you're under constant bombardment for the past 5 months, and you see a convoy of a truck coming with some bread, I would attack that convoy to secure whatever I can. So it really bothers me to see how the discussion is going on online about this case, because they completely detach the Palestinians from their humanity. Like they are not humans, they don't treat them like human beings. Like people sitting in their comfort zones in New York City, in Berlin, in Paris, and elsewhere around the world, and judging the Palestinians. And this is very shameful. And the Biden administration is complicit. And now they are dropping this parachute for the Palestinians in Gaza, and this is just for show. They're sending them humanitarian aid via parachutes. Guys, how much of an humanitarian aid can you drop via parachutes? Right? Why is it via parachutes and not allowing convoys of humanitarian aid to go into the Gaza Strip? Because the Israeli occupation forces are not allowing the American government to send enough humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. So Biden has to do something about it because he has to save face in front of the American people. And because we are in an election year, so he has his own electoral calculations, not because of the Palestinians, but because he's losing the voters, he's losing the American people, and he's most importantly losing the younger generation, what they call the Gen Z, who are now staunch support. Most of them are supporting the Palestinians. So he has to regain them back. He has to regain the Muslim population because he plays identity politics in the United States, right? All these things, all these considerations are the factors why Biden dropped these parachutes over the boxes of parachutes over the Gaza Strip. And it's not even enough for a few hours for a few Palestinians there, right? But it was only for show. But this also raises another question. Who is in control of who? Is the United States in control of Israel, or is Israel in control of the United States? This is the most embarrassing diplomatic moment for the United States since World War II. When a small country like Israel is humiliating the United States and telling the Biden administration, you're not going to send humanitarian aid through the trucks and convoys, and if you want, you can drop some of them from the air. And the former ambassador of the US to Syria, I think his name is Jeffrey, I forgot his name now. Anyways, he wrote the other day on X saying this is humiliating for the United States. A superpower is being subjugated by the psychopaths in Tel Aviv, like Netanyahu's government, the Smotriches, and Ben Gavir's. So this clearly shows that Israel has an enormous leverage and influence over the United States, and it also shows that the neocons have created an atmosphere of intermarriage that the foreign policy objectives of the United States is no more distinguishable from the foreign policy objectives of Israel, right? And despite everything is happening now in the Gaza Strip, you have someone like Ursula von der Leyen, and she comes and says, I'm deeply disturbed by images from Gaza. Every effort must be made to investigate what happened and ensure transparency. And then someone else comes like Joseph Borrell, and he says, I'm horrified by news of yet another carnage among civilians in Gaza, desperate for humanitarian aid. None of them dare even to mention Israel, that Israel is causing this humanitarian catastrophe in the Gaza Strip, and it's Israeli forces who shot against the Palestinians who tried to collect the humanitarian aid, and it's Israel who is forcing the United States to drop the humanitarian aid from the air. And as if this catastrophe, humanitarian catastrophe, is being caused by a meteorite, like something came from outside world, aliens or something. The hypocrisy is sickening. The hypocrisy is beyond me in this regard. But there is an explanation for this, and the explanation nowadays is unfortunately not political, but rather religious, right? Redemption Through Genocide. This is written by Bernard Rubin. He is an American author and a political scientist. He says, on February 24th, Yaakov Godu, an anti-government demonstrator in Haifa, so he's an Israeli anti-government demonstrator, and his son, Tom, was killed by Hamas in Kibbutz Kisufim on October 7th. So when Hamas attacked, his son was killed, right? And his father is protesting now against Netanyahu, and he told the Haaretz that members of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government are, quote, deranged messianic envoys. This is not me. This is the father of a killed Israeli man. This is the government that President Biden treats as a friend and ally with whom the US has a few differences. He and his envoys show no sign that they understand whom they are dealing with or what it would take to stop them from dragging the world into the conflagration that they and their apocalyptic Christian allies in the US are praying for. Calling members of Netanyahu's cabinet deranged and messianic is not a figure of speech, he says. These are not marginal figures. With no hindrance from Netanyahu, they are leading a movement to expel Palestinians from Gaza and settle it with Israelis. They are also overseeing the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from the West Bank through pogroms, expulsions, and assassinations. The rabbis of the Talmud forbade trying to hasten the arrival of the Messiah, but heretical movements have sought to force the redemption. While these messianists have some followers among American Jews, their most powerful supporters in the US are white evangelical Christian Zionists, who have become a hegemonic force in Donald Trump's Republican Party. They believe that the conquest and settlement of the land of Israel by the Jewish people will set off a world war, for which they pray as the precursor to the second coming of Christ. It sounds to me like this is the most anti-Semitic ideology ever. Shock at the atrocities of October 7, messianic beliefs, and unconditional US financial and material support have combined to produce the apocalyptic cruelty of the current campaign in Gaza. For Messianist Jews and apocalyptic Christians, the very existence of the Palestinian people has become an intolerable obstacle to the realization of the divine plan. Only ending material support for the assault on Gaza and triggering new elections in Israel might have a chance to halt the juggernaut. The International Court of Justice has ruled that Israel's Gaza campaign poses a plausible and urgent threat of genocide. Future historians of Jewish messianism and American failure may record that in 2024, redemption through sin became redemption through genocide with the unconditional support for the United States. There are increasing number of scholars, authors, journalists, American officials, former diplomats, they're all speaking up. And despite all these objections, what type of tangible differences can we see on the ground in the Gaza Strip? Nothing. It's going from bad to worse. And the ICJ asked Israel to submit a report showing that it has improved the situation in the Gaza Strip. And since then, the situation has become worse. So if the court cannot stop Israel, if the United States is not willing to stop Israel, then what's the solution? And people come and write in the comments in my X account or elsewhere, and they say, yeah, but what is the axis of resistance is doing in this regard? You know, like, first of all, as if I'm the representative of them. Secondly, I'm just an analyst, guys. Thirdly, what could they do in this regard? Like, the only way now to stop Israel is to go into direct war against a nuclear power, and not only Israel, but against the United States. Right? Do you guys see any other solution how to stop this genocide in the Gaza Strip? And I'm not calling for war against Israel. I'm just saying that the only way now to stop Israel from committing the genocide in the Gaza Strip is war against Israel, right? The other powers to enter into war, direct confrontation. And this is what these zealots in Tel Aviv want. This is why they want to expand the scope of the war from the Gaza Strip to the neighboring countries, to Lebanon, to Syria, because they have a vision of an Armageddon for the region. And through the Armageddon, they think this will fasten the second coming of the Messiah. This is in their perception. But do they also think that this is going to just be a one-sided killing? Because in my opinion, when I said this is an anti-Semitic ideology, because many Jewish people will die, right? Many of the regional players will fire on Israel. And who's going to die in the discourse of this war? The Jewish people. So they want for the Jewish people to die, right? Because they are provoking it and they want it. And yesterday, Israeli forces, I'm going to address this again today, they tried to infiltrate or break through the Lebanese territories, the Israeli forces, and Hezbollah repelled them, right? I was watching an interview of Jeffrey Sachs and on Napolitana, and he described the current Israeli government perfectly, in my opinion. I want to show you this video. This is what he said. Israel is in non-stop war crime status, in genocidal status, without shame, without remorse, without truth. This is a murderous gang in government. They are zealots. They are not going to stop.
Israel has deliberately starved the people of Gaza. Starved. I'm not using an exaggeration. I'm talking literally starving a population. Israel is a criminal, is in nonstop war crime status now. I believe in genocidal status. And it is without shame, without remorse, without truth, without insight into what it's doing. But what it is doing is endangering Israel's fundamental security, because it is driving the world to believe that the Israeli state is not legitimate. This will stop when the United States stops providing the munitions to Israel. It will not stop by any self-control in Israel. There is none in this government. This is a murderous gang in government right now. These are zealots. They have some messianic vision of controlling all of today's Palestinian lands. They're not going to stop. They believe in ethnic cleansing or worse, depending on whatever is needed. And it is, again, the United States, which is the sole support. And it's our mumbling, bumbling president and the others that are not stopping this slaughter.
Guys, I just want to know that in Israel, they used half of their ammunition, right, in the past few months against the Gazans. And the United States provided them with the ammunition again. So all these bombs that fall over the heads of the Palestinians are American weapons. And the guidance is from the American side. So I am not drawing distinction between the United States and Israel in this regard. And as Jeffrey Sachs said, Israel is now a non-stop war crime status, in genocidal status, without shame, without remorse, without truth. This is a murderous gang in government. They are zealots. They are not going to stop. And they have this so-called messianic vision of ethnically cleansing the Palestinians from the Gaza Strip, from the West Bank. They want to occupy the entire thing. And Netanyahu said that they will not accept a two-state solution. It's done for them. They have already taken the decision that two-state solution is dead, right? And not only that, they were trying to infiltrate the Lebanese territories this time, yesterday night. And this time they found a resistance from the Hezbollah side. So this is the border between Israel and Lebanon. And here they tried to infiltrate into the Lebanese territories. And Hezbollah thwarted a ground attack in response to an attempted infiltration by the Israeli occupation forces, hostile force into Lebanese territory in the Wadi Qatamun area opposite to Meish. Hezbollah targeted them with rockets, achieving direct hits. And to be honest with you, this is not really surprising to me. They are speaking about invading Lebanon. It's been quite a while, right? And they wanted to expand the hostilities to Lebanon since the beginning in October 7. And the Americans were like trying to calm the Israelis because this will mean a direct intervention of the Americans, right, in this war. And the Americans sent an envoy to Lebanon today. I'm going to read you this news, which is a little bit funny. So, in a significant diplomatic move, the United States has put forward a proposal aimed at de-escalating tensions on the Lebanese front, particularly concerning the situation with Gaza. Early this morning, Beirut received an American communication detailing, quote, realistic suggestions brought forth by envoy Hochstein instead of intended for Lebanese stakeholders. The U.S. proposition includes maintaining Hezbollah forces' presence along the border while mandating the withdrawal of medium and long-range weapons to areas north of the Litani River, effectively cooling tensions immediately on the Lebanese front. In exchange for the security adjustments, the United States is offering urgent economic aid to the Lebanese government. Additionally, it is pushing for a resolution to Lebanon's presidential vacuum, the initiation of negotiations for land border demarcation based on Lebanese-Syrian maps, and the commencement of gas exploration activities within 3 months in all legally available blocks and under existing operation tenders. And I had to laugh about this because the former, this guy, his name is Amos Hochstein, he's an American Israeli, by the way. He was born in Israel. He served in the Israeli army as a tank crewman. He came to Lebanon and submitted, quote, realistic suggestions to the Lebanese government asking Hezbollah to withdraw its heavy weaponry to the north of the Litani River. And I said, I don't know who is more stupid, the United States or Israel. how do they expect Hezbollah to withdraw its heavy weaponry to the north of Litani? Do they think Hezbollah has official military installations, or do they think Hezbollah will move the rockets and missiles under the tunnels or dig in new tunnels to send them north of the Litani River? Guys, this is the envoy of Biden to Lebanon. His name is Amos Hochstein. He was born in Israel. He is a businessman, diplomat, and former lobbyist. Currently, he is the Deputy Assistant to the President and Senior Advisor for Energy and Investment under US President Joe Biden. He has worked in the US Congress, has testified before congressional panels, and has served in the Barack Obama administration under Secretaries of State Clinton and Kerry. He was appointed Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in 2011 and as a Special Envoy and Coordinator for the International Energy Affairs in 2013. In 2015, President Barack Obama nominated Hochstein to be Assistant Secretary of State for Energy Resources, but the Senate didn't act on the nomination. While at the State Department, Hochstein worked as a close advisor to Vice President Biden. He served in the administration between 2011 and 2017. So this is the guy that they sent, former Israeli army officer to Lebanon as a mediator. And they are offering to the Lebanese government to convince Hezbollah to withdraw its heavy and medium weapons to the north of the Litani River. So they want it like 40 kilometers away from the borders with Israel. And this is really funny because it shows that these people do not understand anything. And they think that Hezbollah will accept such an offer because they are offering them some energy income, right? Because they're talking about border drawing, and then the Lebanon will have a right to extract the gas in the Mediterranean after the demarcation. So they think that they will persuade Hezbollah to withdraw its heavy and medium heavy weapons to the north of Litani. What these people do not understand that Hezbollah is not from the Mars or from Jupiter. Hezbollah are the people of southern Lebanon. So those who are carrying the fight nowadays against Israel in southern Lebanon, they are the sons and they are the locals of these towns and these cities in southern Lebanon, right? And they are, by the way, from different religious backgrounds and sects, and they are even Christians, and they are socialists. They are Syrian socialist nationalist fighters. They are from different Palestinian factions in Hezbollah fighting against the Israeli occupation forces in this regard. And how do they think Hezbollah would withdraw these weapons, right? Like take them out of the bunkers and carry them and go to the north of Litani. What kind of an offer is this? Seriously. I'm 100% sure that Hezbollah will reject this offer. They will. America should send realistic offers and suggestions to Israel to stop the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. And the second day, Hezbollah and the Yemenis and the rest who are firing against Israel or Israeli assets, they will all stop. That's the root cause of the problem, right, for them, that there is an ongoing ethnic cleansing and genocide against the Palestinians. And they say, we're not going to stop until there is a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. So Biden should really send Hochstein to his own home country, to Israel, to discuss with Netanyahu, but it seems that he doesn't have much influence or will to do that. Guys, now I'm going to move to another sensitive topic, and I want to make a disclaimer. I live in Germany and I don't have suicidal thoughts, and I'm not here to criticize Germany as a nation, and I'm not here to threaten the national security of Germany. I am a resident of Germany, and if an outside enemy tries to break the security of Germany, I would be in no way or shape helping an enemy of Germany, and I'm not assisting anyone to destabilize Germany. I wish the prosperity, stability, and the best for Germany from the bottom of my heart. But I also believe that the German officials are making mistakes. And I am, as a political analyst and an observer, I have the right to criticize a policy without endangering the security of Germany or any other country. My intentions are to criticize the policy and tell the politicians that what they're doing is incorrect. And as a journalist, I have the right to do that, and I have the right to have a free speech in discussing these issues, and because it's already in the press, and it doesn't make any sense for me not to discuss about these issues as well. So it seems that Russia hacked a conversation, what they call in Germany, it's a telco, it's a telephone conference between different German high-ranking officers, and they were discussing the supply of the Taurus missiles to Ukraine. And as you may know, guys, this was a very sensitive issue for Germany, and Olaf Scholz is resisting to send this type of weapon to Ukraine because this type of weapon could be used to attack inside Russia, and if it happens, then the Russian side could interpret it as a German intervention, direct intervention in the conflict, and this will have repercussions on Germany, right? But it seems that the defense minister of Germany asked his officers to study the implications of sending the Taurus missiles to the Ukrainians, and if the Ukrainians can use this type of missiles to attack and destroy the Kerch Bridge connecting between Russia and the Crimea. And I think this is a dangerous escalation, right, in this regard. And I summarized what happened in this case from the German mainstream media. So I want to tell you a few facts about this case. For example, the first person who published this leaked audio discussion was Margarita Simonian. She is the editor-in-chief of the Russian RT-TV, and in German media they call her a Russian propagandist. So they want, of course, to discredit her, but at the same time, they cannot discredit the leaked document, the leaked audio, because the Ministry of Defense said that the conversation actually took place and it's correct. So when she published this teleconference, which has happened basically on what is called the WebEx service, and this was recorded by Russian Secret Service agents, in which the German Air Force inspector, his name is Ingo Gerhards, the Air Force Brigadier General Frank Grefe, and two officers in the rank of lieutenant colonels spoke about the problems of a possible Taurus delivery to Ukraine. Now, as I said, the defense ministry confirmed that the conversation actually took place, and however, they said that the Germans do not want to take part in the Ukrainian defense against Russia, and the Russian claims that this is a direct intervention in the conflict is inaccurate. Now, the recording starts with the usual chat at the beginning of a video conference. Grefe is connected from Singapore, so he's in Singapore, and he's connecting with his colleagues from a hotel. It's, of course, not secured. So for him, it was just before midnight, and he had just had a drink. His connection was apparently the weak point, not secured, so that the Russians have broke into this connection, and they learned what they are speaking here. According to the recording, Gerhardt and his experts prepared an information meeting for Defense Minister Boris Pistorius from the SPD, who wanted to go deep into Taurus, and he wants to understand this weapon and the implications of these weapons and supplying them to Ukraine in order to be able to classify the arguments for and against the delivery of these cruise missiles. It was therefore clear to the officers what Ukraine would like the missiles for. They wanted to give these Taurus missiles for Ukraine because it can be used to attack the bunkered ammunition depots of Russia and on the Crimean Kerch Bridge, which is central to the Russian war logistics. One of the lieutenant colonels describes the ability to carry out such attacks successfully as, quote, unique selling point of the Taurus. So, these two objectives, that they can hit bunkered ammunition depots and hitting and destroying the Crimean Kerch Bridge, is, according to one of the lieutenant generals who was present in this this video conference, was the unique selling point. So he says a bridge the size of an airfield requires 10 to 20 shots. So according to them, they have to fire 10 to 20 cruise missiles from this Taurus systems to destroy the Kerch Bridge. The central topic that Gerhard spoke about with his people: can the Ukrainians use the weapons without the involvement of the German army? This group of generals discussed all possible models to support the Ukrainians. Gerhard insisted that there should be no direct link to Ukraine, so they want to give it, this Taurus, to Ukraine, and the Ukrainians can be trained on this Taurus, and the Ukrainians can carry this attack against the Russian Kerch Bridge connecting the Crimea to the Russian mainland, but they don't want to be directly involved in this, right? They don't want to be part of this. So he says, we won't be able to implement the whole thing with any kind of involvement from us. So they don't want to be involved directly in this. They don't want to be present in Ukraine and guiding the Ukrainians to fire these cruise missiles. So mission planning by German soldiers at Büchel Air Base, for example, crosses a red line. Training assistance could be provided in Germany, but ideas such as sending German army soldiers to support the Airbus subsidiary MDBA, the Taurus manufacturer, whose people could then advise the Ukrainians, all of this is rejected. So they want to guide and train the Ukrainians in Germany, but they don't want to have German soldiers in Ukraine, just like similar to the British soldiers who are present nowadays in Ukraine. Conclusion of the round was that the Ukrainians would have to be trained to the point where they can master the devices on their own. And the idea is twice. For example, maybe British soldiers who are there could help the Ukrainians. And so they don't want to go there, and they want to give these weapons to the Ukrainians. Maybe the British soldiers could help them in Ukraine, but not the German soldiers, right? This is the final agreement. And so what is the significance of this leak, of this publication, of this leaked audio? First of all, the process is extremely embarrassing, of course, for the Air Force Inspector Gerhardt and the Ministry of Defense. In Germany, everybody's speaking about it as well. The military counterintelligence service is investigating the issue, and they will have a lot to investigate, probably also on their own behalf. I mean, this was a serious breach in their cybersecurity affairs. Of course, the whole thing is also embarrassing for the allies of Germany. London now makes no secret of the fact that the English have a few people on site, but the public is now finding out about their specific activities, including loading cruise missiles and cabling the carrier aircraft. So during this conversation, it seems that the German officers mentioned that the role of these British officers in Ukraine at the moment is to load these cruise missiles and cable the carrier aircraft. So they are actually giving operational support to the Ukrainian forces there. Incidentally, according to the reporting, the French, who were also criticized by Scholz, are not there at all, but there are people with American accent in civilian clothing. So the Americans and the Brits are there. The Americans are in the civilian clothing, and the Brits are helping the Ukrainians in loading the cruise missiles and cabling the carrier aircraft. So what are the consequences of refusing to give Taurus to Ukraine? They say in the end, the whole thing is a low blow for Ukraine. In short, if the Germans don't deliver this type of weapons, Ukraine could soon be left without cruise missiles. These weapons played a decisive role in Ukraine being able to decimate the Russian military infrastructure in Crimea and the Black Sea Fleet. A lack of supplies, regardless of the model, will massively worsen the situation. So this is how the German mainstream media covered this case. And the recommendation is, of course, to send Taurus missiles from these so-called military experts, from these journalists, because Ukraine will not be able to disseminate the rest of the Russian forces and their installations in the Crimea, whether the bridge or Crimea is the red line for Russians. I don't understand why all this focus on this case, right? And trying to call this leak as if it is only by Russian propaganda channels is it's absurd, because the content of this recording is the most important part. And if we see what, for example, the Tagesschau, which is a German mainstream outlet, said in this regard, they say the recording published yesterday by Russian propaganda channels is 38 minutes long. To hear details that should probably never be made public. The Ministry of Defense has now also confirmed to the IRD Capital Studio this is a case of wiretapping. The internet conference of high-ranking Air Force officers, which was apparently overheard by Russians on February 19th, this has happened so in like 24, 25 days ago, was about the preparation of a 30-minute briefing for Defense Minister Boris Pistorius on the feasibility of a Taurus mission in Ukraine. The officers openly talk about, among other things, the fact that the US and British military personnel are operating on the ground in Ukraine and discuss options for training Ukrainian personnel for the Taurus mission in Germany. Another topic is the use of the weapon, for example, against the Kerch Bridge, which connects the Russian mainland with Crimea. Defense politicians in Berlin are now demanding comprehensive clarification. The Bundeswehr, which means the German army, has to clarify this. The CDU defense politician Roderich Kiesewetter to the ARD Capital Studio. I mean, this Kiesewetter, he has an Israeli flag and the Ukraine flag in his bio on Twitter. In general, the following applies. The Bundeswehr must achieve its own turning point in communications technology because that will only be the tip of the iceberg. So now I want you to see and the focus, right? That they all now focus, all these politicians, on the breach in the cybersecurity of Germany and not what has been discussed there. They're not criticizing that the discussion was about this plot to send this weapon or train the Ukrainians to use them against the Russian infrastructure, but rather the focus is that how this has happened, right? This may have been partly successful also because explosive internal matters became known, such as the information that soldiers from partner countries were operating on the ground in Ukraine. Experts for the WDR investigative reporter like Florian Flade say that this is not just about disclosing the German army's apparently inadequately protected communication channels. He says this incident is quite serious in terms of security policy. This is almost a disaster because several things are achieved here at the same time, playing into Moscow's hands. The chairwoman of the Defense Committee of the German Parliament from the FDP, her name is Marie-Agnes Strack-Zimmermann, she told the German editorial network that our naivety must finally come to an end. Cyber attacks, espionage, and disinformation have already increased massively today. Germany is obviously vulnerable in this area. You see, all the focus is about the breach of the cybersecurity. I mean, if they expect Russia not to spy on them, of course, that's nobody expects that. Russia is spying on them, and especially after the Ukraine war, because Germany is providing huge military and economic assistance to Ukraine, and Russia considers the Ukraine war an existential threat. So spying from all sides is, I think, on the table. Americans are spying, and Americans are spying on their own allies. Imagine that Russians would not spy on the Germans. But Germany now accuses Putin of instigating discord amid Taurus missile discussion leak. And Germany officially accused Putin of trying to sow disunity with the wiretap leak of a confidential German army discussion on the Ukraine war at a time when Berlin is under pressure to supply the Taurus missile to Kiev. I mean, just put yourself in the shoes of Russia. If you recorded such a video conference, would you leak it to the media or not, right? If it was the other way around, it was Russia was planning to attack some German infrastructure, and the Germans have they got an access for this type of the type of leak, this type of recording, right? They would show it to the public, so to embarrass their enemy. This type of things happen. But what I don't understand is why blaming Russia for something that you're planning against Russia. This is just something that I couldn't really understand in this case. And all these things in general, guys, happening. It also, like the Ukraine war, the Ukraine war was the gate that accelerated the shift of the balance of power from the collective West to more going towards the Russians and the Chinese, right? And this was an article published recently called, I just want to broadcast you this article because we're speaking about Ukraine and how it changed and shifted the balance of power. Western dominance has ended. EU foreign policy chief admits warning of West against the West geopolitics. So the European Union's top diplomat Josep Borrell admitted that the era of Western dominance indeed definitely ended. He warned that the EU must not divide the world into the West against the West, as many in the global South accuse us of double standards. I mean, I understand where is he coming from. Sometimes he tells the truth about this case. But I created a video about this particular news because we were speaking about the Taurus, the Ukraine war, and how the Ukraine war has shifted the balance of power, right? And now Josep Borrell, he tells half the truth, right? But he doesn't really extract the correct lessons from it to shift the policy of the EU or the United States in the direction that could serve the Americans, the Europeans, and the rest of the world. So this is a short video I made on this particular case. It's 3 minutes video. I'm going to publish the edited version of the video like usually I do on my X account tonight. Under my personal account, Kevork Almassian. You can follow me on X, guys. I would really appreciate that. But for you, I always show the exclusively during these live streamings, this type of short videos, but unedited. So let's take a look together. The era of Western dominance has indeed definitely ended. These are the words of the European Union's top. I think this one is a little bit the background music is very high. I will just remove the background music behind this and I will upload it again while we are speaking about this case, because very loud, in my opinion, music, it distracts us from listening what's happening there. I mean, Josep Borrell is theoretically correct that they shouldn't divide the world between the East and the West. And the global South is actually accusing the collective West of hypocrisy, especially after what's happening in the Gaza Strip, right? Like in Ukraine, after every attack, for example, there was a missile that fell over a residential building in one of the Ukrainian cities or in Kiev. The mainstream media and the politicians in the West, they would condemn and they would publicize statements after statements and video statements, and the mainstream journalists, they would fly to Ukraine to show the misery, to show the pain of the Ukrainian people, right? But when it came to the Gaza Strip, nothing is happening there, right? I mean, very few journalists are actually telling the entire truth of what's happening in the Gaza Strip. And that's really alarming, and also sending signals to the rest of the world, and especially to the global South, that the Europeans and the Americans want to regain their hearts and their hearts and minds, right? But they're unable to do that. After this, they're not able to do that. So Josep Borrell is actually warning against that. And he's warning that this policy is going to be counterproductive and it's going to reflect on us negatively. So now I just downloaded the video again. Thankfully, the internet is a little bit fast today, so I was able to remove the background music and upload it again on this application or on this software. StreamYard. It's just processing now. And I want to draw lessons from the mistakes, right? If I'm a politician and I make a mistake, I want to draw a lesson from it because I'm warning against a certain policy. So let's take a look. The era of Western dominance has indeed definitely ended. These are the words of the European Union's top diplomat, Josep Borrell. Borrell occasionally expresses his true beliefs, like his statement that Europe is a garden and the rest of the world is a jungle. A few weeks ago, he surprised us by criticizing the United States for deploying the civilian deaths in Gaza while sending weapons to Israel. In his more recent blog on the official website of the EU's diplomatic service, the EU's top diplomat argued that if the current global geopolitical tensions continue to evolve in the direction of the West against the rest, Europe's future risks to be bleak. Borrell's argument that the era of Western dominance has definitely ended is valid, yet it doesn't seem he drew the correct lessons to envision a better future for Europe and the global south. For example, Borrell calls for sending more and quicker military aid to Ukraine, in particular regarding artillery ammunition and the latest technological developments such as combat drones. What Borrell fails to comprehend is that the global south, which he aims to be communicating with, views the conflict in Ukraine as a continuation of the wars initiated by the US and its allies against them directly. They perceive Russia's involvement in Ukraine as a proxy battle with NATO. Consequently, as Ukraine continues to lose territory, NATO's influence and global dominance will gradually diminish, and this reflects positively on them since Europe and the United States are their former colonizers or trying to colonize them today with military and financial means. Another potential conflict that could ignite the entire globe is the continuous onslaught on Gaza. Once again, Borrell dismisses Israel's intention and determination to ethnically cleanse millions of Palestinians from Gaza and the West Bank. Rather than acknowledging this, Borrell insists that the violence will cease if a two-state solution is enforced. I'm not sure if Borrell realizes it, but Israel has effectively killed the possibility of a two-state solution and has already refused to consider it. Does the EU's chief diplomat truly believe that the Palestinians and the people of the region trust in his motives, let alone his capability to impose a two-state resolution on Israel? The United States is delivering humanitarian assistance through parachutes today, as Biden's strategic partner prohibits the transportation of humanitarian convoys to the Strip, where the population is suffering from starvation and malnutrition. Mr. Borrell, please stop this absurdity. The entire world is watching the complicity of the US and the West with Israel's atrocities in Gaza, and there is an ongoing genocide lawsuit against Israel at the International Court of Justice. The train of accepting your role or advice without a major policy shift from your side has come and passed. This pertains to policy changes in the Middle East, Ukraine, Taiwan, Latin America, Africa, and other regions. If this is not clear to you, those advising you are disconnected from reality. You know what bothers me about these politicians in the West, that they think they have the moral high ground and they think that they know what's best for us, especially in the Middle East. And they want to lecture us and they want to give us lessons about how we should organize our lives and how we should govern ourselves and what type of values we should adopt, etc., etc. This is the real issue that bothers me. And when Borrell nowadays comes and gives advices about a policy shift and he wants to correct the course, right? I mean, he doesn't offer solutions because his solution is to send more weapons to Ukraine. And this is really absurd because it shows that they don't learn anything from their mistakes, right? And they cannot really get rid of this the colonized set of mind, and they want to always dominate us. They want to subjugate us. They want to show us what's best for us and everything. This has become at the time like they lost legitimacy, especially after what happened in the Gaza Strip now. And whatever they say and tell us, we're not going to listen. You know, the train of us listening to you and considering your advice has come and passed already. We're not going to listen to you anymore. You know, we are the ones. We are the civilized world. We are the ones who can teach you about humanity. We are the ones who can teach you about human value. You cannot teach us about all these things. And today there was a segment of a video published by Russian state media. They did an interview with President Assad of Syria. And there are English subtitles, guys, so you can read the English subtitles. But I had to put blur actually the logo of the channel, because if I now show you this video and YouTube detects the logo of this Russian channel, because the Russian channels are banned in Europe and in the United States and also YouTube, so they will block this video and they will delete it. So I had to blur it. So I really apologize for the owners for the copyright and everyone who is behind this video, but I had to do it. And the journalist is clear. He's in the video, so I think he will understand that if he sees this. So let's watch what the Syrian president had to say about these Western officials, and do they have a credibility or not?
И ваше личное мнение очень важно. Но вот вы говорите установить новый баланс с Западом. Но это подразумевает диалог. С кем на Западе говорить? Есть ли политики, с которыми имеет смысл вообще разговаривать? У нас Байден, который не помнит, как его зовут. У нас Трамп, которого раздирает от ненависти к Ирану. У нас европейцы, у которых нет национальных интересов, они даже отказались от своего языка. Что Урсула фон дер Ляйен, что Боррель, что Шольц чаще, по-моему, публично говорят на английском, чем на испанском и немецком. У нас был Борис Джонсон, который врет обо всем и не способен навести порядок даже на собственной голове. И есть Макрон, который никак не может определиться, то ли он половина де Голля, то ли треть Наполеона. Так с кем разговаривать? Кто способен дать слово и его сдержать?
Если хотите разговаривать, строить отношения с торговой компанией, то у вас есть менеджеры, директора различных отделений, есть исполнительный директор. Есть также совет управляющих, который представляет владельцев. В отношении Запада, и особенно США, президенты – это исполнительные директора, но они не являются владельцами. Если говорите с исполнительным директором, то он повернется к председателю совета управляющих, чтобы узнать его мнение и решение, что думает он. Что касается европейских президентов, то они директора отделений и ничего не сделают, если того не пожелает вышестоящий директор. Не принимают решения, делают все, что говорит директор. Кто входит в совет управляющих и обладает правом решать в корпорациях, с ними и нужно обсуждать политические вопросы. Но основная проблема с ними в том, что они заинтересованы в войнах. Если позвать их на войну, они поддержат и дадут на это денег. Все, что не представляет для них выгоду, им не интересно. Поэтому политики, в том смысле, в котором вы предполагаете, на Западе нет. Там есть интересы, сиюминутные, ежедневные, временные, личные интересы, интересы групп. Все крутится вокруг денег и личного влияния. Например, Трамп был против войн, когда был президентом. Хотел вывести войска со всего Ближнего Востока, включая Сирию. Но он нанес ракетные удары по Сирии, потому что ему сказали так сделать. Якобы, чтобы доказать свое лидерство. И он нанес эти удары, чтобы засвидетельствовать свою исполнительность. Так поступают на Западе. Надо решать политические вопросы, но политиков там нет. Президент Путин пробовал с ними разговаривать на протяжении 20 лет. Достиг ли он результата? Результата нет. Нет даже намека. Мы пытались строить хорошие отношения с Западом в течение 50 лет. Были хорошие деятели, мудрые, у многих высокие моральные принципы, однако они ничего не смогли сделать. Политическая система у них – это система покупок и продаж, а не общих интересов.
So, Assad has given an interview to Vladimir Solovyev, and he's posting some of the segments of this interview on his personal X account. So I took this from his personal X account. But one last video I want to show you, because I want to end this video a little bit. Maybe we have to, like, we started this conversation with so much pessimistic and negative news coming from the Gaza Strip. Maybe we could have a little bit of a laughter. And he was asked about Zelensky's sanctions against him. And Assad reminded Zelensky that he's a comedian, and he joked about Zelensky's personal sanctions against him. And he said sarcastically that he was nervous. He had a nervous breakdown since then. I want to show you this video as well. Just.
Но когда вводят персональные санкции против президента страны, какой в этом смысл?
Это символическое действие, которое имеет значение для большинства западных обывателей. Они представляли на протяжении многих лет, что жизнь любого человека должна начинаться на Западе. Кислород на Западе. Если Запад лишает человека чего-то, то он или умрет, или станет изгоем. На Западе в это верят. Не верят, что мир может измениться. Когда они принимают такие решения, то они направлены в первую очередь на западных граждан. Бедные люди, которые не знают, что происходит в мире, верят, что президент Путин страдает, не спит по ночам из-за такого решения. Такова реальность. Они такие простаки. Я про чиновников, а не народы.
Так что, когда Зеленский ввел против вас персональные санкции, на вашем сне это не отразилось.
У меня нервное расстройство с тех пор.
Ну, по крайней мере, он смог вас рассмешить.
Он же комик. Это же было его первой профессией до президентства. Был, кстати, намного успешнее в том качестве роли комедианта, а не лидера нации.
So guys, I hope you enjoyed today's live streaming. I appreciate every one of you. Before leaving this live streaming, I would really appreciate it, guys, if you just hit the like button, thumbs up. That's really important for me to increase the viewership of this channel and increase also the subscription of this channel. And if you want to support my independent work, you can become a patron. The link is scrolling on the screen, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. With your help, this channel stays independent 100%, and I can bring to you quality news and analysis from my perspective. And I think that's important in the era of the corporate media outlets for there to be independent journalists and presenting to you credible analysis and news. And I will see you tomorrow, guys, at 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. Peace be upon you. Salam.